This is the story of how the last human was thrown into an alien arena to die. But he didn't just survive. He became a legend. He became the executioner. A brutal space fantasy of survival, honor, and vengeance. The ship burned as it fell. Breaking through the thick clouds of the unknown planet, the hull cracked and shattered, spitting flaming debris across the dark green sky. Lightning slashed through the storm. A dense atmosphere, hostile gravity. Inside the dying ship, a single prisoner remained alive. Cade. A human. The last one. His body was covered in wounds and scars, his torso smeared with dried blood and alien fluids. The marks of Black Lagoon's experiments burned on his skin like hot iron. He had spent his entire life as a test subject, a slave, a lab rat for the superior beings who had wiped out his species. He didn't know freedom, only pain. The cabin trembled violently. Alarms screamed like metallic wails. Survival. Instinct took over. Cade broke free from the shackles binding his wrists and ran to the evacuation pod. His chest heaved. The sirens and the ship's violent tremors were muffled by his own ragged breathing. He pressed the controls. Nothing. The ship was headed straight for the green hell below. One final impact. The hull cracked. Air was sucked away. Cade was hurled into the void. The world swallowed him like a monster. He tore through the canopy of colossal trees, branches slicing his skin like blades. His body crashed onto the muddy ground, landing among leaves with a dull thud. Pain exploded through his entire being, but he didn't scream. He had learned not to scream. The storm roared above. Lightning illuminated the immense forest, revealing enormous shadows moving between the trees. Unknown creatures. Massive predators. Cade dragged himself out of the impact crater. His body was weak, but his mind was ice cold. He looked around. The place was alive and lethal. In the sky, colossal birds with obsidian-black feathers glided, their eyes glowing in the dark. Within the dense vegetation, massive forms slithered among the roots of the cyclopean trees. The air was thick, humid, laden with the scent of earth and rotting flesh. He needed to move, and fast. Behind him, something shifted. A low, hungry growl rumbled through the shadows. Red eyes flared in the darkness. A beast. Something between a wolf and a tiger, but much larger, with serrated fangs and muscles built to tear prey apart in a single strike. Cade had no weapons, no escape, only his hands. The creature lunged. He threw himself aside at the last second, rolling across the drenched ground. The monster ripped through the earth where he had stood just a heartbeat before. Without thinking, Cade grabbed a sharp rock and charged. If he was going to die, it wouldn't be with his back turned. The alien wolf roared and attacked again. Cade dodged, using the creature's own weight against it, and drove the improvised blade into the beast's right eye. Screams. Blood. A fight for survival. The creature howled, furious, thrashing like a demon. Cade held on, his vision blurred by the creature's hot blood. Then he snapped the monster's neck. Silence reigned in the forest. Cade dropped to his knees, gasping for air. He looked at the beast's carcass, his skin covered in cuts and bruises. The first battle of many. He had survived. But the jungle didn't forgive, and the worst was yet to come. Days passed, maybe weeks. Cade hunted to live. He learned to move in the darkness, to smell death before it arrived. He crafted rudimentary weapons from bones and stones. His body became pure muscle and scar. He was no longer a prisoner. He was a predator. But then they appeared. Cade smelled them first. Then he heard them. Swift movements. Precise. Hunters. He hid among the trees, eyes sharp. Then, emerging from the forest shadows, came the humanoid tigers. Tall, muscular, their fur marked by tribal patterns. Each carried bone spears and curved blades, golden eyes gleaming with awareness. Predators. Warriors. They found him. Surrounded him in seconds. The largest of them, a warrior with burning eyes and scars from past battles, pointed a spear at the human. "You have trespassed into our territory, pale-skinned creature." The voice was deep, powerful. Cade didn't respond. He knew when words meant nothing. The only way to survive was to prove his worth. The leader roared. The forest trembled. The others attacked. The first came fast, slashing at him with the curved blade. Cade dodged, seized the warrior's wrist, and twisted hard. The tiger snarled but spun his body, driving his claws into Cade's shoulder. Pain. But Cade didn't feel pain anymore. Another struck. Cade dodged and punched, a solid blow to the beast's snout, breaking teeth. He spun, grabbed a fallen spear, and wielded it like a staff, blocking strikes. The jungle became a battlefield. Speed against instinct. Technique against pure survival. They fought until only two remained standing. Cade, and the greatest warrior. The feline leader smiled. There was respect now. "You do not fight like the weak of this world," he said, spitting blood. "What is your name?" Cade wiped his mouth and looked at him, his eyes cold. "Cade." The tiger nodded. "I am Rakthal. Now, Cade, you are part of the pack." The heavy jungle air was familiar to Cade. He had learned to move like the beasts, to sense danger before it arrived. But that night, danger came without warning. The crimson moon shone above the colossal trees when they arrived. First, absolute silence. No creature made a sound. The forest's predators knew what was coming. Then the lights. Blue rifts tearing through the sky, hunting drones emerging like metallic specters. They slithered between the branches like serpents, moving too fast to be targeted. Rakthal growled beside Cade. The hunter's instinct told them both the same thing: run. But there was nowhere to run. The attack was brutal. Blasts tore through the forest, burning trees, exploding the ground. Rakthal leaped aside, spinning his spear and hurling it at one of the drones. The metal pierced through the machine's hull, slamming it against a trunk. Cade ran, grabbing an improvised bone blade. A drone swooped down, mechanical claws reaching for him. But he jumped, latched onto the machine, and drove the blade into its circuits. Short circuit. Smoke. A crash. But for every one destroyed, two more appeared. They weren't here to kill. They were here to capture. The first rays of a pale sun were rising when Cade and Rakthal finally collapsed under the enemy's weight. Chains of light wrapped around their bodies. Gravity betrayed them, and darkness took them. When Cade opened his eyes, the world was no longer the same. First he smelled it: burnt metal, hot oil, sweat, dried blood. Then the sounds: screams, growls, roaring crowds. Finally the light, an artificial sky, forged in metal, towering over impossible spires. They were in a colossal fortress, a marketplace city of slaves, gladiators, and intergalactic merchants. An empire built on the suffering of countless species. And at its center, the arena. Cade and Rakthal were thrown onto the cold ground of a massive prison courtyard. Hundreds were there. Beings of all shapes and sizes, four-armed creatures, glistening scales, red eyes with no eyelids. Some wept. Others prayed. But the most dangerous ones merely waited. Rakthal spat on the ground. "Damn flesh collectors." Cade said nothing. He just looked up. There he was, the arena master. A being with marble-white skin, glowing violet eyes like cursed amulets. He wore black robes with golden details, his expression one of pure disdain. He watched his new toys. His lips curled into a half-smile. "Let the games begin." The crowd roared. Cade and Rakthal were surrounded. The arena's steel floor trembled beneath their feet. Flames erupted from fissures in the metal. Above them, the city lord's balconies gleamed with pulsating lights. They were entertainment, and the show was about to begin. The gates opened. Two creatures emerged from the opposite side of the arena. Giants of living stone, with hollow eyes and mouths that should not exist. Their hands were hammers of rock. Their footsteps walking earthquakes. The crowd screamed, placing bets. Would the human and the feline die in the first fight? Veteran gladiators watched from the sidelines. Only the strong would survive. Rakthal growled, preparing himself. Cade simply raised his fists. No spears. No swords. Only bone and will. The first giant charged at Cade, a stone fist hurtling straight for him. But Cade did not retreat. He ran toward the monster. Jump. At the last moment, he slid under the creature's legs, using his speed against the enemy's size. He climbed its back like a hunter scaling a beast. Fingers dug into the cracks of the stone skin. He climbed higher. The second monster struck, but Rakthal intercepted it, launching himself at the giant. Claws against stone. He tore chunks from the colossus while Cade reached the top of the creature's skull. The monster's hollow eyes flared with fury. It tried to shake Cade off, but Cade had already ripped a stone fragment from its body. An improvised blade. And then the final strike. He drove the blade into the creature's skull base. The monster fell. Brutal deaths. The crowd went wild. The first battle was won. But hell was only beginning. Time lost its meaning. Days. Weeks. Maybe months. The cycle was always the same. Wake. Fight. Bleed. Survive. Gladiators had no names, only numbers and nicknames. Cade and Rakthal had started as nobodies. Now, everyone knew who they were. In the underworld of the arena, where warriors slept in stone cells lit by cold plasma torches, whispers spread like wildfire. Is the human still alive? Him and the tiger? They're unbeatable. Impossible. Gladiators lived in the city's depths, housed like animals in crowded dormitories. The air was thick with sweat, dried blood, and weapon oil. The food? Tasteless protein mush, served on metal trays. Dirty water, mixed with something that kept their muscles strong. Everything was designed to keep them alive just long enough to die the next day. But Cade and Rakthal didn't die. They won. And the more they won, the more the crowd loved them. More bets were placed. More money flowed into the pockets of the arena lords. And the more they earned, the tighter the chains around their necks became. The first fight of the week was against a being from another dimension. They called it Scrath the Impure. It had no fixed form. Its body twisted and contorted, as if always on the verge of dissolving into reality itself. But at its core was a cluster of green glowing eyes that never blinked. The eyes shone. The arena changed. Cade felt his mind being pulled into a dark void. A psychic predator. The crowd roared as Cade fell to his knees, hallucinating his own death. He saw himself crushed, torn apart, burned alive, again and again, in an endless loop of impossible futures. Rakthal roared, but his claws passed through the creature's body like liquid smoke. They were losing. Then Cade understood. The fight wasn't against the monster. It was against fear. He clenched his fists until his nails pierced his own skin. The pain brought reality back. With superhuman effort, he leaped straight into the heart of the being and ripped out one of its glowing eyes. The monster shrieked. Cade didn't stop. He tore out another, then another, until Scrath collapsed into a pit of shadows and ancient bone dust. The crowd went wild. The human who broke fear. 2 fights later, they were thrown against a winged creature. They called it Threxion, the Sky Devourer. Half bat, half dragon, 100 times more ruthless. The arena shifted. The ground split into floating platforms, defying all notions of gravity. Cade and Rakthal leaped from one to another, dodging the razor-sharp strikes of the beast's wings. Rakthal tried to grab it mid-air, but was slammed against a stone wall. Cade did the unthinkable. When the beast dived to attack, he jumped straight into its open mouth. The crowd held its breath. What happened inside the creature, no one saw. They only heard a scream of agony and watched as Cade tore through the monster's throat from the inside out. Drenched in black blood, panting but standing, the impossible had become real. Over time, Cade and Rakthal forged their weapons from the bodies of the enemies they killed. Cade wielded twin blades made from Scrath's razor-sharp bones. A short spear infused with the crystallized venom of the Sky Devourer. Fists wrapped in metal plates ripped from a cybernetic gladiator they had crushed weeks before. Rakthal wielded serrated claws forged from the fangs of an underground leviathan. A bow made from the tendon of an interdimensional beast, capable of firing arrows that vibrated at frequencies that tore through flesh. A light armor made from the hide of a fire dragon, resistant to extreme temperatures. They adapted. With every battle, they learned. They became more than warriors. They became living legends. One night, sitting on the cold stone of the arena dormitories, Rakthal looked at Cade while sharpening his claws. You know, when I first met you, I thought you'd be dead in a day. Cade didn't reply. He just waited. Rakthal chuckled. But you have something different. Something even the warriors of my tribe don't have. Cade met his gaze. What? The tiger smirked. You never backed down. There was respect now. More than that, there was brotherhood. They knew they could never escape the arena. But they would fight together until the end. And the end was coming. The arena master had plans for Cade. The echo of the last battle still reverberated through the arena. Cade and Rakthal stood, covered in blood, but alive. They were unstoppable, unbreakable, a duo that defied the odds with every fight. And for that, the arena master decided to end it. The announcement came like thunder. The lights over the arena intensified. The metal floor vibrated as the holographic screens flickered to life. The crowd roared in excitement. And then, the tyrant's voice boomed through the Colosseum. Warriors, the moment you've all been waiting for has arrived. Silence fell for a brief moment. There is only one path left to glory for them. Today, only one of them will leave here alive. The doors to their chambers opened. Guards entered, armed with electric spears, shoving them forward. Rakthal turned to Cade, his eyes burning with fury. This is a joke. But Cade already knew. He had expected this. Rakthal growled, clenching his fists. I won't fight you, human. Cade didn't answer. He simply walked toward the arena. Because he knew the truth. If they didn't fight, they would die anyway. And worse, they would die as cowards. The crowd roared in frenzy. The metal floor trembled. The sound of bets being placed echoed like rolling thunder. The human versus the tiger. The soulless warrior against the untamed hunter. Rakthal raised his fists, claws gleaming under the arena lights. Cade unsheathed his twin blades, his breath steady. For a moment, they just stared at each other. They were brothers in arms. But now one had to kill the other. The gong struck. Rakthal attacked first. He moved fast, a frenzied beast, slashing his serrated claws in a deadly arc Cade barely dodged, feeling the wind of the strike graze his skin. Another charge. Rakthal came down from above, trying to crush Cade under his weight. But the human rolled back, spinning midair and driving a blade into the tiger's leg. Blood dripped. Rakthal snarled, spinning and kicking Cade in the chest. The human was sent flying, crashing against the arena wall. His body ached, but his mind was cold. Rakthal wasn't fighting at full strength. He was still hesitating. And that was the difference between dying or surviving. The crowd started to boo. They wanted a massacre. They wanted blood to spill. The arena master smiled and pressed a button on his throne. Suddenly, a plasma shot seared through Rakthal's leg. The tiger roared in agony, collapsing to one knee. Cade froze for a second. The tyrant's voice echoed from above. Stop this farce. Fight or die. Rakthal panted, gripping the burned wound. His golden eyes met Cade's. He understood. He smiled. End it, human. Cade felt something in his chest. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Pain. Not physical pain. The pain of losing the only friend he ever had. Rakthal closed his eyes. Cade gripped his blades tightly. The crowd held its breath. Then, with a single, precise strike, Cade slit Rakthal's throat. Blood sprayed. The body fell. The crowd's roar was deafening. Cade stood there, covered in his only friend's blood. But inside him, something died along with Rakthal. And in its place, something new was born. The crowd no longer called him human. Now he was the executioner. He no longer spoke. He no longer dreamed. He no longer felt. He fought. He killed. He won. And they paid to see him do it. Weeks turned to months. Time dissolved. Cade was no longer a person. He was a spectacle. The arena master watched from above, satisfied. His prize, his rare jewel. The last human, turned into a soulless monster. And Cade stared back. There was no rage. No words. Only the promise that one day he would kill him. The fights continued. Cade kept killing. But there was no challenge, no emotion, no fury. Only precision. He was a perfect mechanism of carnage. The crowd didn't see him as a man. They saw a machine. A monster forged by hell itself. And then the day came. The day hope was born. And died just as quickly. The crowd roared. A new fight was about to begin. Cade entered the arena as he always did, expressionless, without hesitation. The spotlights burned his sweaty skin. The dried blood of dozens of opponents still clung to his twin blades. On the other side, a warrior with iron skin took position. They called him Vraknor, the unmovable. Tall as a mountain, strong as an earthquake, he wielded a double-bladed axe capable of splitting a ship in half. The gong struck. The monster charged. The impact was devastating. Cade dodged by mere inches. The axe cut through the air beside his face. One mistake, and he would have been torn in two. But something happened. Something unexpected. In the explosion of fury and blows, Vraknor turned and hurled the axe in a brutal arc. At the arena master. The blade spun through the air, a silver blur slicing through the fire-lit sky. The crowd screamed. But before it could reach its target, the shield activated. A shimmering violet energy barrier flickered and deflected the blade midair, sending it flying away. The arena master didn't even move. The crowd fell silent for a moment. Then laughter echoed. The tyrant was amused. But Cade didn't laugh. He saw the exact point where the shield ended. He saw the flaw. A plan began to take shape. Cade was no gladiator. No warrior. He was an assassin waiting for the right moment. For weeks, months, he observed, studied, prepared. His cold eyes scanned the arena with every fight, every battlefield, every trap, every weapon that could be used. And then, he found what he needed. The only material strong enough to pierce the shield. The butcher's scythe. A weapon lost in an ancient battle. It was trapped in the arena's ossuary, among the relics of dead champions. Its shaft was made from the fossilized bone of an extinct titan. The blade, a fusion of metal and energy, capable of bending in the air like a whip. Perfect for bypassing the shield and striking its target. Everything was ready. The final piece of the plan would come in the next fight. The enemy? A monster with gelatinous skin. And Cade knew exactly how to use it. The crowd screamed. The name of the human executioner echoed through the iron corridors. He entered the arena as he always did. But this time, he didn't plan on leaving. On the other side, the beast awaited. A creation of the arena's bioengineers. A translucent body, boneless, filled with venom pulsing beneath its elastic skin. Its black eyes were empty. The monster didn't fight. It only devoured. But Cade didn't intend to defeat it. He intended to use it. The fight began. The monster advanced, its skin rippling like a living ocean. Cade ran straight toward it. The audience didn't understand. He wasn't going to dodge. He wasn't going to fight. Then it happened. Cade leapt with all his strength onto the creature, sinking into its elastic flesh. And he was launched upward like a cannonball, straight at the arena master. The impact of the jump, using the gelatinous monster's skin, sent him flying like a living arrow, spinning through the air, his body cutting through the dust and the arena's fiery light. The butcher's scythe extended, its blade vibrating like a hungry lightning bolt. And then the impossible happened. The blade struck the arena master's face. Blood. A single crimson drop gleamed under the intense light. For a fraction of a second, something that had never happened before occurred. The arena master recoiled. His purple eyes widened. Not in anger, not in surprise, but in fear. The crowd held its breath. The sound of the arena, once a roar of screams, bets, and chaos, vanished. Absolute silence. The alien nobles in their boxes froze. The gladiators watched, unblinking. Even the tyrant's guards didn't know what to do. Because for the first time, the immortal had bled. And then, the chant began. A first roar, hoarse, primal, from the middle of the crowd. Another echoed. More voices joined in. Last human. Last human. Last human. The arena shook. The chant took over everything. Aliens, slaves, gladiators, nobles, intergalactic criminals. All of them were screaming his name. Not Cade. Not prisoner. Not slave. The last human. For a moment, he was no longer alone. For a moment, he was something greater than a gladiator. He was a symbol. And symbols are dangerous. It was then that the final blow came. A blade pierced his chest. His body was pulled back to the ground. The arena master took a deep breath, his confidence returning. The arrogant smile came back. The silence broke. Hope died. But Cade was not dead yet. Silence. The cold ground against his bloodied skin. The bitter taste of his own blood in his mouth. Darkness surrounded Cade, but it wasn't just the absence of light. It was the absence of everything. There was no pain, no fear, no hope. Only the void. Was this how it ended? So many months. So many fights. So many deaths. And for what? He had been a hair's breadth away. One strike. And he failed. The arena master was still alive. The tyrant smiled at him. Smiled because he had won. Because he always won. And now Cade lay there. The last human. The last mistake. His eyes opened, but he saw nothing. The world was a blur. A haze of metal and dried blood. His body wouldn't respond. Only his mind was still working. And that was what tormented him. Then Cade heard it. The music. Not real music. Not something from the arena, not something physical. The music inside his mind. The sound of what remained of humanity within him. It was a cold melody. Painful. Lonely. The chant of a forgotten soldier. The echo of those who came before him. The screams of those who died nameless. Humanity had been wiped out. And now he understood why. Humanity never stood a chance. They had been strong. They had been warriors. They had been conquerors. But in the end, they were only prey. No matter how hard they fought, the universe was too vast. The forces that destroyed them were too great. They were not the lords of the cosmos. They were only dust. Dust that someone decided to sweep away. Cade saw in his mind the battlefields where humans fell. The scorched deserts of forgotten worlds. The red seas where the last soldiers sank. The cities that once shone like stars, now reduced to ashes. Everything he was. Everything he was trained to be. Everything Rakthal died for. It meant nothing. What was a single man against an eternal empire? Nothing. Nothing. For a moment, Cade wanted to die. For the first time in his life, he wanted to give up. What difference would it make? If the last human died here, bleeding alone in the depths of the arena, the universe wouldn't even notice. No star would weep. No sun would fade. There would be no revenge. No rebirth. Only the end. Maybe it would be easier. To accept. To accept that he wasn't a warrior. To accept that he wasn't a monster. To accept that he was nothing. His eyes began to close. His breathing slowed. And then, the cell door opened. The blood was still warm. The floor of the arena's underground prison was a carpet of bodies. Some guards lay with precise bullet wounds in their foreheads, others sliced cleanly, as if a single strike had ended their lives. The corridors were bathed in the blue twilight of security lights. The distant sound of the grandstands vibrated above their heads. But here, in this forgotten corner of the fortress, silence reigned. The air smelled of iron and gunpowder, and at the center of it all, a woman with sharp eyes and a katana still dripping blood. "Elias, hurry. The shift change is coming. We need to move." Her voice was firm but calm. The man called Elias was kneeling before an electronic panel, connecting a small device to the cell's security terminal. His agile fingers danced over the hologram, breaking security protocols in seconds. The sound of metal locks releasing echoed down the hall. The cell door opened. Inside, wrapped in darkness, Cade did not move. The last human, the executioner of the arena, wounded, bloodied, staring at them as if they were ghosts. Elias took a step forward, his gaze serious but free of arrogance. "We've heard stories about the human executioner." Cade didn't answer. He only looked at the fallen guards. Then he looked at them. For a moment, he didn't know if he was alive, or if this was just the delusion of a man who should already be dead. But then Una spoke. "Do you want to get out of here or not?" Cade took a deep breath and stood up. Underscore 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 underscore. The corridors were narrow. The scent of burnt metal and industrial oil filled the air. They moved quickly, silently, guiding Cade through paths he had never known. Hidden passages. Abandoned ducts. Una led the way, her katana always ready. Elias covered the rear, his short rifle adjusted for silent shots. Cade, even wounded, kept pace. But one question hammered in his mind. Is this real? Humans? He believed he was the last. He was certain. So how were they here? They passed through a final corridor and reached the arena's drainage tunnel. An underground industrial sewage system, where the fortress's waste was dumped into the planet's lower depths. Una pulled a small spherical device from her belt. She activated it with a click. The sphere vibrated in the air, projecting a hologram of a young girl with short hair, glowing black eyes, and a light smile as she worked on multiple digital codes. "The path is clear. I'll cover our tracks." Cade stopped. A child's voice. The girl in the hologram winked at him. "Hi, Executioner. I'm Era." Cade frowned. He didn't understand. A child? For years, he had believed humanity had been exterminated, that he was the last shadow of an extinct race. And now, they even had children? Before he could react, Elias touched his shoulder. "We need to go." Cade forced himself to move forward, but his mind was no longer the same. Underscore 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 underscore. The escape module was hidden beneath the metal plates of the underground city. A small camouflaged transport, invisible to the fortress's sensors. They boarded in silence. Elias took the controls. Una checked the weapons. Era continued operating remotely, her voice echoing through the communication channel. "Interference field is active. We have a 3-minute window to exit the atmosphere before they detect us." Cade sat in one of the seats, feeling, for the first time in years, the weight of being inside something other than a cell or an arena. The ship roared to life. The turbines ignited. And then they flew. They broke through the clouds, pierced the atmosphere, escaped the cursed planet. And that was when Cade saw it, floating in the void of space. A colossal structure, black as obsidian. Solid, silent, a beast asleep in the shadows of the cosmos. Its metal plates bore the scars of ancient battles. Its hull was a mosaic of makeshift repairs. It was not beautiful, but it was real, and engraved on its side, in massive letters worn by time, was its name, the final ember of the horizon. Cade held his breath. He understood. This was humanity's last bastion. The resistance. The forgotten. The survivors. The last humans. The rescue ship approached the hangar. The doors opened, revealing more hooded figures waiting. Elias looked at Cade. "Welcome, brother," he said. His voice one Cade had never heard before, yet it felt so familiar. "We haven't forgotten your martyrdom, and when the time is right, we're gonna fuck this whole thing up." And for the first time in a long, long time, Cade believed humanity was still alive, and one day, they would burn the universe in vengeance.